Mrs. Margaret Conley, Executive Director of Asia Society, Northern California, distinguished speakers, esteemed participants, ladies and gentlemen, namaskar, good afternoon to all of you. It is a great pleasure for me to come and speak to you today. I would like to thank Asia Society for organizing this India Envision conference today. In fact, I was told to speak about the just concluded elections in India and also a little bit about the rise of India. I wanted to make a good presentation with all the facts and figures about the recent election, but because of the power outage, so I can't make the presentation, but I'll try to speak about the recently concluded Indian elections and also the Prime Minister during his victory speech laid down his vision for the next 5 years tenure, especially with regarding to the Indian economy. So I'll also be informing about you, and also if there are any questions, also I can respond later. So first, as we call the Festival of Democracy in India, which is the general elections for the Lok Sabha, the lower house of the Indian Parliament, just concluded on the 4th of June with the results being declared. So the Honorable Prime Minister led National Democratic Alliance won a massive mandate because this is a historic mandate because no Prime Minister other than the first Prime Minister of India, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, won for the third consecutive time. So in that sense, it is very historic. Even the mandate which the ruling National Democratic Alliance received is like we have total 543 seats in the lower house of Indian Parliament. So out of 543, the majority mark, a simple majority mark is 272. So the National Democratic Alliance got 20 seats above the simple majority, which is 292. So in that sense, it is a very good victory for the National Democratic Alliance. So just I would like to inform about the overall polling process. So the elections were announced on 16th of March this year, and the results were out on 4th of June. So you can see over a period of close to 3 months, the overall electoral process. So because India is a huge country, the elections were held in 7 staggered phases. So the first stage of elections was held on 16th of April. And the last round of election was held on the 1st of June. So we had the 7 phases because the Election Commission had to conduct free and fair elections by deploying the requisite personnel and security personnel and also making other arrangements, especially for the people to come out and vote in large numbers. So just to give some figures, this time we had a total electorate of close to 970 million who were eligible voters, out of which close to 66% exercised their vote, which translated to 642 million casting their ballot during the 7 phases of elections, out of which 312 are women voters. So this is the largest exercise of democracy in anywhere in the world. In fact, according to the Election Commission, I think the 642 million is about 2.5 times the total electorate in the 27-member European Union and 1.5 times the total electorate in the G7 countries. So that is the size of the Indian electorate and also the gigantic exercise conducted by the Election Commission of India. In fact, 15 million personnel were involved in conduction of these elections, which included the security personnel as well. And also there were 1.05 million polling stations. They were there. And we had even aeroplanes were used, some 135 special trains were also deployed. Around 400,000 vehicles were provided to the personnel in conduct of the elections. And overall, the election was free and fair. And even the Election Commission of India took a lot of efforts to ensure larger participation of the electorate. They have used a lot of like public figures, including the sportsmen and also film actors, and also media and other things to encourage voters. They also use Facebook. I think millions of Indian voters, they got Facebook alerts that this is the polling day, please go and vote in the elections. So that's how they were able to ensure 642 million participation in India. And one important thing is, even in the so-called disturbed, little bit disturbed states in India, like in Jammu and Kashmir also, close to 58% of the people like voted. So that is very huge. I've seen last 20, 30 years of elections in Jammu and Kashmir. So the percentage was less than 40%, but now this year it was 58%. So this is remarkable because this is the first election which happened after the abrogation of the Article 370 in the of the Indian Constitution, integrating the state of Jammu and Kashmir fully into the India. So this is very important. And one more important thing is, two important leaders in the state of Jammu and Kashmir lost the elections. The previous Chief Minister, Mehbooba Mufti, she lost her election, and the Chief Minister's son, Mr. Omar Abdullah, he also lost election in the valley. One ex-MLA who is currently in jail, he won the election against the Chief Minister Omar Abdullah, Farooq Abdullah's son Omar Abdullah, with a margin of 200,000 votes. And even in the state of Punjab, we have seen one person who is in prison who won the election close to with a majority of 200,000 votes. So this shows the vibrancy of Indian democracy. This shows that any person who is eligible to contest can contest in India. So even somebody is in jail, they can also contest. People also canvass family members, and that's how they were able to win. And finally, India has shown that Indian democracy is very strong, and also everybody is happy, both in India and abroad, about the overall exercise of this, overall this elections, and also what we call the Festival of Democracy. And on 4th of June, a couple of days ago, the Prime Minister made a victory speech. So he congratulated the people of India and also all the parties that participated. And during his speech, he listed, among other things, his vision for the Indian economy. He wants to continue his vision to make India a developed country by 2047. So you must be aware, when India celebrated 75th year of Indian independence a couple of years back in 22, so the Prime Minister called all Indians living in India and abroad to make India a developed country by 2047, when India celebrates its 100th year of independence. So that also he emphasized. And he said, like now, as Margaret also mentioned, India is now the 5th largest economy in the world. So in the next 3-4 years, India is set to become the 3rd largest economy, surpassing the economies of Japan and Germany. So that, a couple of days ago, the last year's GDP growth rate figures were out. So earlier we were expecting the growth rate will be in the range of 7.8%, but according to the new figures, for the year 23-24, the Indian GDP grew at the rate of 8.2%. As you are aware, India is one of the fastest growing large economy in the world. And despite the average global growth of only 3% in the last 3 years post-COVID, Indian economy is growing around 7.5% to 8% in the years after COVID. And it is expected to continue this growth even according to the rating agencies, IMF and World Bank. We are expected to grow at least 7.5% to 8% in the next few years. I think as for the vision of the Prime Minister, India should grow around 8% every year, so that when India celebrates the 100th anniversary of the India's independence, Indian GDP is expected to be around 32 trillion from the current 4 trillion GDP. And Indian per capita currently, which is around $3,000, it is expected to be around $20,000. So this is not a overestimation, but like for example, since 1991, when India started liberalization and started its integration with the global economy, if you see the average growth of India, India at that time we were a 300 billion economy in the 90s. Now we are a 4 trillion economy. So even if we see the last 30 years history also, even if we maintain the similar growth rates, I think whatever the vision of the Prime Minister to make India a developed country by 2047 is possible. So that is one of the things. And some of the important things mentioned by Prime Minister is he would like to ensure a woman-led development of India. Because in last year September, you must be aware, so the Parliament of India passed a historic bill which gave one-third reservation of parliament seats to the Indian women. So this thing will enter into force from. So this thing will be implemented from the next general election in 2029. But that's what Prime Minister said. He would like to have women participation in all sectors from sports to space and also in the entrepreneurship. So he will provide all the, like his, even during election he used to say about Lakpati Didis. He want to make Indian women millionaires in that sense. And he also spoke about boosting the Indian manufacturing. Already, especially in the area of mobile manufacturing, India is now the second largest mobile manufacturer in the world. We have Apple, which is already exporting 25% of Apple iPhones from India. Apple also said it will ensure that in the next few years, overall global exports, around 50% will be from India. And we also have a lot of production linked incentive schemes. Indian government is providing 26 billion worth of incentives in about 17 key sectors like electronics, solar photo modules, pharmaceuticals, and also drones and a lot of other sectors, including electric vehicle batteries. So I think with this thing, we would like to enhance our manufacturing, especially in the semiconductor sector as well. As you're aware, Micron, which is a company in the west coast of the US, they already started setting up a facility in the state of Gujarat with an overall investment of 2.8 billion. So we hope more investment will come into the semiconductor sectors. And one more important thing emphasized by the Honorable Prime Minister was to continue integration of India's economy with the global economy. As you're aware, India is negotiating a lot of free trade agreements. Like in the last few years, the FTAs with UAE, Australia, EFTA countries, so they have entered into force. We already are near conclusion of FTA with UK, with EU also we're negotiating. We're negotiating with other countries like Peru, GCC. So we hope we'll continue this journey of integrating Indian economy with the global economy. And now, largely the Indian growth is basically due to the domestic consumption and domestic investment. But we want to make exports and international trade also as an important engine of economic growth. So that's why we would like to continue this path of entering into trade agreements. We would like to have a FTA with US also, but US now it is not keen to, especially the Biden administration. But whenever they are keen, we would like to engage with the US to enter into FTA. But nevertheless, India is working closely in the Indo-Pacific. We have not exactly a free trade agreement, but we have concluded agreements under the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. This is a 14-member grouping which is led by US, India, and Australia, Japan, Quad countries and ASEAN countries are partners. So last year we have concluded few agreements, which is a supply chain agreement and also clean economy agreement. I think this gives a lot of potential for collaboration with the US and India, because we see US as an important partner of India in its economic growth, because it is the largest trading partner with around 190 billion trade in year 2023. And also US is also third largest investor into India. So we look forward US to continue to be an important partner, especially we would like to have a lot of investment from US into India. And we hope to work with all of you and also take your suggestions to see how we can ensure a lot of investment from the West Coast into India and ensure the Prime Minister's vision of making India a developed country by 2047, and also especially make India a third largest country by 2027. Thank you very much. I think I need to end up, but I am free to respond to any queries. Thank you.